Today, we have Josiah Igono on our podcast. Josiah was a previous college athlete, former strength coach for GCU and the Texas Rangers, a performance psychology professional, and author of a new book we're going to unpack on today's podcast episode called Own the Pieces. Whether you're an athlete or not, we discuss the mental toughness, how to reframe circumstances in your life, and how to tackle the tricky triad that will help in so many areas of your life. Listen now. Josiah Igono, welcome back to No Gray Areas. You know, you have the pedigree to be one of our few that are back a second time. So you actually came on our show.
Yeah.
You were actually one of our first guests like over 2 years ago, but we had to have you back on because you came out with the book, Own the Pieces. And
That's right.
we're going to do a giveaway with this book next
nice.
week after this thing drops. But I wanted you to unpack a little bit about that book. Great book.
Yeah.
I read it. Own the Pieces. Tell us why you wrote it.
Yeah. Well, appreciate you having me on again, man. Thanks for the invite. It's always good hanging out with you, man.
Yeah. Well, can I interrupt though really
yeah,
quick and just
absolutely.
say, I'm going to ask you to bring a little more energy. You know, I'm just kidding. Anybody that knows you, that's the thing I love about
Hey,
you.
just give me a second, man. I'm getting warmed up right now.
Yeah.
I'm getting warmed up.
No, that's what I love about you. Every time I leave a conversation with you, I'm like, I don't care what it is. If I'm going to go eat, I'm like, oh, I'm ready to eat, man. I mean, you just fire people up. So
man,
I
appreciate
appreciate
you.
it. All right. So
Yeah.
Own the Pieces.
Yeah. Own the Pieces, man. Own the Pieces was a book that's written to athletes about mental performance.
Yeah.
And even though it's written to athletes, I believe that any high performer, anybody who wants to get better, is going to take something from it. You know, when you look at the world of sport and performance psychology, sometimes it's ominous, it's misunderstood. I remember even on the way up here, I was thinking, man, I was like, yo, you know, when I was growing up as an athlete, the only mental performance, mental skills training that I had was reading my Bible, right?
Yeah.
Visualizing and just like, you know, studying my playbook.
Yeah.
That was it. There was no like, you know, there was
you're totally right.
There's no like, oh, okay, let me think about perfectionism and confidence and like that wasn't a thing for us.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And so
And the other part was the coach yelling during the game, going, "Focus!
yeah.
Focus!" And
Exactly.
that was like the end all of mental health or mental focus,
mental
right?
toughness, all of it,
yeah.
right? And so now we have actual words that we have put on it, you know, to describe certain things like perfectionism and confidence and flow states. You know what I'm saying? We have different words. And so the book was written in a way that it's conversational. It's like you and I having a cup of coffee.
It's
right?
exactly what it's like. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
So I have professional athletes reading it. I have 7-year-old, you know, kids who are playing club reading it.
Yeah.
So that's how it's written. Very simple and digestible.
Well, and I want to tell the audience for sure, because we have a lot of people in the audience that would go, "I'm not an athlete," or I have been an athlete, but I'm telling you, this book will help you no matter where you're at in life, like whatever you're doing in life. For example, chapter 1 is focus and performance.
Yeah.
Now, who among us doesn't have to at times go like, I gotta get focused, man.
Yeah.
My mind's straying. I've had to write this email for the last hour and I can't finish up the email. So, and you break it down into 3 steps, that chapter: identify the immediate mission,
That's right.
kill the noise, and execute the mission.
Yeah.
And I read that, and obviously it's focused toward athletes, but I'm going, man, I'm not an athlete anymore, except when I go to the gym and work out and try to stay healthy and pretend I still have it. But I looked at that and I'm going, every area of my life, I have to identify the immediate mission.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I have to kill the noise.
That's right.
And I want to talk about that a little bit, kill the noise, and execute the mission. So chapter 1, right away, anybody who picks up this book, I'm telling you, it'll help you in your personal life.
Yeah, I start off the book with focus, because if you cannot focus on anything, you cannot do anything for a sustained amount of time.
Yeah.
So that's why I actually start with focus. The average individual, there's all kinds of research and data out now. The average individual can only focus on an inanimate object for 8 seconds before he or she loses focus, right? And it's crazy.
And would you say that's gotten worse with our culture and society? Because of and I'm not I mean, you and I are both on social media.
Yeah.
We leverage social media, so it's not all bad.
Yeah.
But I wonder if those tools that we have now, as helpful as they can be in some areas, it certainly seems it's hurting us with our focus.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
I would. There's a double-edged sword with focus, right? So a lot of people say, "Oh, my kid has ADHD," or "I have ADHD," and that's another subject for another podcast for another time. But
You're
there's
saying we got to have you on a third time.
oh my
I'm with
gosh,
you,
man.
man.
The
I'm
third
with
time,
you.
you got to pay me for the third time. You know what I'm saying? The
Okay.
the first two are free. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. So when you look at where we are as a society, to your question, it's a double-edged sword because not only is there an inability to focus like no time in human history, but there's also this welcoming of distractions. As a society, as a world, as a nation, we are welcoming distractions. We got Hulu, we got Vudu, we got Netflix, we got DirecTV, we got YouTube, we got Twitter, IG, Snap, Instagram, TikTok. We got everything, man.
Yep.
And so we are welcoming.
It's all in our hand.
Exactly. It's all in our hand, and we have notifications for everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a double-edged sword. We have an inability to focus, yet we welcome distractions. We love it. We love distractions.
Yeah. Do you notice that with athletes? Do you think it's gotten, I mean, because again, that's always been one of the keys to athletic performance, right? Is the mental ability to focus, to be in the flow state. Is it more difficult for them today, or is it the same?
It's difficult. It's more difficult.
Is it?
There's more athletes today, especially professional athletes, live in a fishbowl. They are being evaluated. They are being watched 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah,
right. there goes Messi right there. Where's my cell phone? Look at LeBron. There goes Steph Curry. Where's my cell phone?
Yeah.
Right? It's crazy, man. Like, you go to a World Series, you go to a playoff game, you go to any type of sport performance of magnitude, and everybody's got the cell phone out, man.
Yeah.
We're not even watching the game. Yeah. We're more concerned with capturing a moment to make us look good.
Yeah.
For social currency.
You know what's so interesting about that is my wife and I, we have a mantra, and we started this over 20 years ago, but we keep morphing it a little bit because it means something different. But we were coming back on a road trip, and I used to be one of those guys where as soon as I got in the car, I wanted the kids to go to sleep. I was calculating how many miles, my average speed limit. I was making a goal. I was always, so it was just like I was on a mission. Mm-hmm. And we took an unexpected exit. Mm-hmm. And it's one of our favorite family memories. So we started saying, man, we got to live in the moment more. We got to start taking the exits in life. But what we meant by living in the moment, taking the exits, part of what you're saying is focusing on that moment, on that, like the journey is as important as the destination. So you in chapter 1, you talk a little bit about that. You talk about like identifying the immediate mission.
That's right.
Break that down, because I love that part. Right. I'm going, this is, again, for our audience. This applies for all of you.
Yeah, for sure. So when you talk to an athlete, 9.99999 times out of 10, when you say, hey, what's the immediate mission in today's game?
Win the game.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the incorrect answer.
Yeah.
The immediate mission is never to win.
I loved when you said that.
The ultimate goal is to win, but the immediate mission is what must I do now and what must I do next? Because if I'm a football player, right, I'm a part of a football team, and it's 4th and 1, and we're in the red zone, we're down by 2. The immediate mission is to get the first down, to give to get that ball in position so my field goal kicker can kick the game-winning field goal. Yeah. That's the immediate mission. We got to move the chains.
How does that help someone stay focused? Rather than, so we use, again, the analogy you're using of an athlete.
Yeah.
Rather than thinking like my immediate mission is to win the game, but it's to think of this next play, that my immediate mission is next play. How does that help someone with focus?
Because what happens is a lot of times when we look at focus, we are trying to, that's why the adjective, the key descriptor there is immediate. And what happens is many people try to look at the whole thing. How am I going to get this degree? How am I going to pay this bill? How am I going to, do X, Y, Z, ABC, 1, 2, 3, fill in the blank? And it's just like, no, right here, right now. It's like Moses, right?
Man, I love
it's like Moses, right? God was just like, hey, man, Moses, I need you to do something for me, man. I need you to go to Pharaoh. And Moses was just backpedaling. No, I can't do that. No.
I'm not a good speaker.
I'm not a good speaker. And I love what God told him. Dude. He goes, hey, Moses, what's in your hand right there? He's like, oh, I got this staff. He goes, hey, let me show you something. And we know the story. We know what happens next. And a lot of times it's just like, dude, what do you have right there in your hand? What is the thing that you have to do right now? Focus on what you can do right now with what you have and do the very best.
See, and Josiah, this is why I love this book so much, and I'm going to keep bragging on it this whole podcast. It's applicable to everyone. It's focused on athletic performance, But again, like you're saying, we're both men of faith. We're both Jesus followers. And I remember years ago when I was in high school, and I went to my he was a mentor of mine,
Hmm.
and I was overwhelmed with the future, kind of like you're talking about.
Yeah.
Where am I going to go to school? If I pick the wrong school, I'm not going to meet the woman that I'm supposed to
Hmm.
marry. I'm going to miss the whole, you know how you go down that
Yeah.
road. And he said, Pat, man, what is God calling you to do today?
Yeah.
Immediate. That's
Yeah.
that's the key.
Immediate. You got to be focused on the immediate.
So you wrote a book,
Hmm.
and I've co-authored a book before
Hmm.
too, and I know you get overwhelmed if you're like going like, oh man, I got to write a book.
Yeah.
But what you had to do is sit down and go, what am I going to do today
Right
immediately?
now.
Like, what am I doing? Am I going to write
Yeah.
half a chapter?
Yeah.
But that next part then where you talk about kill the noise,
Yeah.
which I think is so important.
Yeah.
You're talking to athletes about the noise, but again, in our world, in our
Hmm.
culture, in our society, we all have a lot of noise.
Yeah.
Explain that, unpack that, kill the noise.
Yeah, so kill the noise. The noise is what is noise? Noise is a disturbance. It's static. It's interference. It's something that is it's an interruption, right? That's what it is. And usually noise is not pleasant. Noise is not only external, not only the fans and the stuff that's going out, the elements, the people, the boos, the jeers, the temperature, right? The adverse things that are happening externally, but it's also internal, right? Like, man, am I good enough? Man, this
Sometimes
is
that's the loudest noise, isn't
that
it?
sometimes that's the loudest noise. Absolutely.
Internal, yeah.
Exactly. So that's what the noise is. And so when you start looking at the noise, right, it's kind of I call it multiple channels of communication. As an athlete, and you have to figure out, those who are listening, they have to figure out what their channels of communication are. But one of the things I wrote in the book is that for an athlete, there should only be three channels of communication open. The communication between me and my coach, me and my teammates. Hey man, what'd you see on that last play? Hey, dude, is the fastball, is it firm? Is it moving? Like, hey man, how does he get in and out of his routes? Can is she good from the out? Is her jumper good? Like
Mhm.
what does that look like, right?
Mhm.
So communication with my teammates, and then communication with myself, positive self-talk, whether that's affirmations, whether that's me praying, whatever the case may be. Those are the only three channels that should be open. And a lot of times we get into satellite TV mode, right? And we got all the channels. We're flicking through all the channels, seeing what's going on. And I talk about this in the book. When we were kids, it's like you go over to your friend's house, and this friend has all the lights on. He's playing PlayStation with you. He's texting. He's on his computer, right? He's doing something on the iPad. He's watching TV on another screen, right? And there are all of these channels of communication open. There's all these and it's like, dude, it's too much. And when you kill the noise, it gets in killing the noise. It's couched messaging, but that's where all of the mental skills come in,
Mhm.
right? The progressive muscle relaxation, the affirmations, the positive self-talk, the focal points, right?
I think
All of
about,
those things.
from that's in chapter 1. The rest of your book has so many of and you're the king of acronyms, by the way. There's a lot of acronyms in here, but the rest of the book, there's so much of it that is actually helping us figure out, because you get in chapter 3 and you're talking about anxiety and
Mhm.
fear and dealing with that. And a lot of that is coming back to that idea of how you kill the noise,
That's
right?
right.
How you just, those three channels of
Right.
communication. And again, I would encourage our audience, you gave a great example. If you're a football player, basketball player, these are the three, right? Your coach,
Mm-hmm.
your teammates,
Yep.
and your self-talk.
And your self-talk. Yeah.
But I would encourage our audience, think about that. If you only had three lines of communication,
Yeah.
what would that be?
Yeah.
That's a great question for them to wrestle with.
What if you only had one?
Oh, this just got really deep.
You know what I mean? What if you only had one channel of communication? You're in dire straits, and you got to figure some stuff out. Who are you calling?
Mm-hmm.
For some people, it's going to make them sweat.
Mm-hmm.
For other people, it's like, oh, huh.
Who are you calling?
You know what I'm saying?
Oh, I know.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And that's why when people are in dire straits, and you've been there, I've been there. That's why. So that's some of the most life transforming moments in our life.
Yeah.
Because you actually get to the point of like, who is it?
Yeah.
Who's the one channel that I need to have open at this time? And hopefully you're listening. I mean, again, we won't go down this road because this would get complex. But The problem with some is that they're so confused on who God is, and sometimes confused on. That's why I say go back and read the Bible.
Yeah.
Just spend some time in the Bible and find out, because you may have been told, you may be listening to a God, and that's actually not the God
That's right.
the true God. The
Mhm.
one that's got his arms crossed, just looking down and just waiting for you to screw up so he can punish you. That's that's not it. So I jump into chapter 3 then, and you get
Mhm.
into the anxiety. And I know this is going to drop after you, but tomorrow while we're sitting in the studio, you're
Mhm.
speaking somewhere, and you're talking about this tricky triad, you call it:
Yeah.
fear, anxiety,
And stress.
and stress.
Yeah.
Let's land here for a moment, because I know for sure there's not a listener that doesn't deal with those, because we're human,
Yeah.
because we live in a culture and a time in human history where there's probably less margin
Yeah.
than ever before. Like you said, you got all this noise going on. Unpack that a little bit, the tricky triad. Why do
Yeah.
you even call it that?
Hey, from your No Gray Areas team, we just want to say thank you so much for listening. And if you're loving this episode, would you just take a moment and leave us a review and rating on whatever platform you're listening from? If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on the new podcast episodes that drop every other Wednesday. By leaving a review and subscribing, you help others discover our podcast's inspirational messages to effectuate positive change in their lives. Okay, let's jump back into this episode.
Unpack that a little bit, the tricky triad. Why do
Yeah.
you even call it that?
I call the tricky triad because obviously there's three things there, and many people conflate those terms. They use them interchangeably. And I think that I'm big on definitions, because if you don't understand definitions, then you can't understand concepts. And if you don't understand concepts, it's really hard to talk big picture. So when you start talking about the tricky triad, especially for an athlete or a high level performer, you got to know what's going on. Because if you know what's going on, then you can diagnose it, you can call it out, and then you can solve it, right?
Yep.
So I don't know if it was Einstein or some famous mind said that when you understand the problem, that's half of the battle. Just understanding what the problem is, right?
Getting to the core issue.
Yeah, exactly. So we have to understand what the problem is, right? What is the thing that we're dealing with? So when you look at stress, for all intents and purposes here in this conversation, is how much tension something is under.
Mhm.
That's what stress is, whether it's cognitive stress, whether it's physical stress. It's how much tension something is under. Tension is not necessarily a bad thing. However, tension can also destroy you if it's too much, right? So when you look at, stress, if I go to the weight room and I stress my bones, my ligaments, my tendons, my
They're
muscles
getting stronger.
for a certain amount of time, right? They're going to get stronger. Like anytime a bone bends, osteoblasts are sent out. The bone becomes calcified, it becomes thicker, and my bones become thicker, right? And they become ultimately stronger. Stress is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, when you start studying stress and different types of physiological, psychological stress, eustress, as we know in science, is positive stress. As a matter of fact, any organism, it's arguable that any organism, if it is to grow, it has to be under some type of stress so that it can grow.
That's a great point. Any organism
Yes.
that is going to grow has to be under stress. Like that's what they've shown.
Yep. It's tension.
Yeah.
As the child is in its mother's belly, what is it doing over time? It's growing, and it's causing more tension, causing more stress for the mother until that child leaves the womb.
Yeah.
Right. So anything that when you start talking about stress is not necessarily a bad thing. In science, we call it eustress. Eustress is it's positive stress. It's stress that promotes growth. Too much stress could crush you or worse.
Yeah.
Right. So stress is not necessarily a bad thing. We just need to understand, you know what I'm saying, like what's happening. When you start looking at cognitive stress, right? Dr. Carol Dweck, or Dr. Carol Dweck, rather. I'm sorry. She is the founder, and she's the one who made the term growth mindset popular. She developed it, right? Dr.
Which is a
Carol
common
Dweck.
term today. You
Yeah,
hear that
Dr.
often,
Carol
growth
Dweck.
mindset.
Yeah, she's awesome, right? And one of the areas that I believe that she studied greatly was the anterior cingulate cortex, which is an area in our brain that's responsible for error detection and responses and things like that. And when you look at like little kids, right? Little kids, when they're learning something for the first time, they're in there and they're gripping that little pen with that pencil, that crayon with their whole hand, and they're just like, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
That area,
something that's just so natural for us, but they're working so hard.
exactly, and there's stress there. There's like cognitive, like, man, I gotta figure this out. My kids, when they're doing homework and they're frustrated, I look at them, I'm like, good,
Yeah.
good. That's cognitive stress. That's good. That means the neurons are firing. You know what I mean? They're firing.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
And then you look at something like fear. Fear has everything to do with something
Which is
that
part of this tricky triad, right?
Yeah, part
So
of
you
tricky
talked about
triad.
stress, now
Yep.
you're talking about fear.
Yep. Fear has a component of there's immediate and present danger. Okay.
Mhm.
The thing about fear, unlike anxiety, which I'm going to talk about here in a second, fear typically.
Yeah, I'm interested in this because I think even I probably think of fear and anxiety as being the same thing
They're not.
a lot, but they're
They're
not.
not.
Okay,
Yeah.
so fear.
So fear, there's imminent and immediate danger present. And typically, this is the kicker right here. Typically, with fear, there is a physical object.
Okay.
With fear, there's a physical
I'm
object.
up hiking and I turn around and look and
A rattlesnake
there's
or a boulder or
okay.
a cougar.
Yep.
Like, dude, you
That's
better be
fear.
afraid.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's something that God gave us, right?
Yeah.
Like, in terms of, having biases and protecting ourselves from danger and this, that, and the third, right? So when you look at fear, if we're in a crowded place and somebody pulls out a weapon, you're like, hey, everybody hit the ground.
Yeah.
Dude, that's cause to be afraid.
Yeah.
Because there's
And that's where we go into the fight, flight, or freeze, right? That like one of those.
So yeah, sometimes, yes.
Like that's what we're supposed
Yeah.
to. Like that's how we're wired.
Yeah.
Because we're in a fearful situation. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's danger. There's
Yeah.
danger. If
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
a 98 mile an hour fastball coming at my head, I'm not going to sit there and be like, oh, come on, let's go. I'm
Yeah.
going to duck, dude,
Yeah.
because there's immediate danger.
Yeah.
There's immediate danger, right? And it could harm me or worse. We live in Phoenix, man. There's snakes and scorpions. I hate snakes. You know what I mean?
do too.
And if a snake jumps out, there's cause to be what? Afraid.
Afraid.
Because there's an
Yeah.
immediate,
It's legitimate.
present danger.
Okay. So
Okay.
fear, immediate, present danger.
That's
usually
right.
with a physical.
There's
object
a physical
of some
object.
kind.
There's
Okay.
a physical that can harm you or
Yeah.
worse.
Okay.
Anxiety has everything to do with an imminent event, right? That has not happened yet.
Okay.
There's an event that is forthcoming, imagined in our mind, that hasn't happened yet.
And I remember in chapter 3, you really unpacked this in this book as
Yeah.
well.
Yes.
That hasn't happened yet. That was
Mhm.
that's the part. Underline when you get this book, audience.
Yeah.
Underline, circle, highlight that
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
It hasn't happened. I call it, and not to be funny with words, but I call it the fear of a fear that hasn't even happened.
The fear that
It
hasn't.
hasn't even happened yet. Oh, she might say no. Well, dude, you haven't asked her yet.
Yeah.
Oh, the plane might go down. It might crash. Dude, you haven't even booked a ticket yet. Oh, they might cut me. They might release me for
Yeah.
the team.
Yeah.
Dude, do you understand that the coach actually likes you and they have plans, long-term plans for you?
Yeah.
Anxiety is a killer, man,
Mm-hmm.
because it's an imagined event. And the thing about if you look at the word imagination, I'm not gonna get into imagination right now, but when you look at imagination is it's neutral. It's neither positive nor negative, but we can make it positive or we can make it negative. I'm gonna ask you a question. What's the difference between anticipation and anxiety?
Oh.
Not a trick question. This is just a philosophical discussion.
Well, anticipation I would usually think of that as a positive thing. I'm hopeful. I'm anticipating that she's going to say yes. I'm anticipating that I'm going to come across the finish line in first place. That I would usually. Am I right? I would usually think that is a positive thing.
You're nailing it. Before you're,
I'm so glad because I took your test in the beginning of this book and I flunked, man. You got to 10. I didn't flunk. I did about like I did in high school. I think I got a 6 or a 7 out of 10.
Yeah,
so I barely
good,
passed.
Man. That's good.
So I passed this one. Good
that's
to know. Good to know.
So anticipation, there's typically there's positive feelings and associations, that come with that, right?
Yeah.
So when you were a kid, the night before your birthday or the night
you
before
can't
Christmas,
wait. You can't wait.
right?
Anticipation.
There's anticipation, but guess what? Has it happened yet?
No.
No, it's all what? It's in our head. It's imagined. It's imagined. It's an imagined event.
Yeah.
Oh man, I think mommy and daddy are gonna get me a bike, or they're gonna give me that PlayStation game, or I think I'm gonna get this for Christmas. It's all in our head, man.
Yeah.
It's imagined.
Yeah.
Right? I think of the disciples on the boat. Master, do you not care that we perish? How can you fall asleep?
Yeah.
There's winds are contrary, and Jesus in there sleeping, dude.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
No anxiety there.
But in that instance, it's actually a conflation of fear, right?
Yeah.
A present and immediate storm.
Yeah.
They're probably sinking. There's like, dude, we're gonna die.
Yeah.
We're going to die, dude.
Yeah.
We're about to die.
Yeah.
Right? So we have to understand that, when you start talking about anticipation, I give you that example because it's imagined, right? And then the same thing that can be said for the positive, it can be taken negative as well.
Yeah.
You know what? I got in trouble at school this week, and my birthday's tomorrow, dude. I don't know if I'm gonna get anything.
Now it's moving from anticipation more of an anxiety.
Yeah,
right.
Dude, my mom and dad are stressed out, man. Dad lost his job and blah 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 blah, and I don't think we're gonna have anything this Christmas or whatever the case may be, right?
It's interesting, Josiah, that you bring up that illustration of like a kid with his birthday or something, because what ends up happening, right, is a lot of the stuff that does happen, these imaginations, these stories we tell, these things that happen to us when we're kids, we bring them with us forward in life.
Oh, absolutely.
So now this tricky triad that you're talking about, especially with anxiety, we're creating stories that haven't happened yet. What's your definition?
The fear that hasn't happened yet.
The fear that hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
But we're going back on
what we know.
Yeah.
And what we experienced.
Yeah. But it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
So you're working with athletes, but again, there's nobody listening that doesn't wrestle with this. How do you help people? I read the book, so I kind of know where you go with this, but how do you help people move away from there? How do you help athletes move away from that?
First of all, we have to define what they're going through. Like, what is it that you're going through? What is it that you're fearful of? One of the things I always ask players, I'm like, man, what are you excited about? What are you concerned about? Right? What makes you angry? Because usually when you ask those three questions right there, you get a lot. You get a lot of
What are you
good stuff.
excited about?
Yep. What are you concerned
What
about?
are you concerned about? What are you angry?
Yeah.
And that's a good one to just, again, our audience, just like take a piece of paper later today and sit down and write out some of that.
Yeah, because you start tapping into the emotions. You start tapping into, like extremes, right? And so to your question, how do you overcome that stuff? There's an acronym that I've been using for years. It's called BRASS, BRASS.
Chapter 3.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's not necessarily an exhaustive list, but it helps with this stuff. It helps, right? When you start talking about cognitive stress, anxiety, and fear, right? And so if you look at the history of brass knuckles, right? Brass knuckles were initially used in Greco-Roman times. Some would say, some historians and scholars would say, during the times of the Colosseum, when gladiators
going back like 2,000 years.
Yeah, man. Gladiators would come out and they would affix themselves with all these different weapons so that they can survive, right? During World War I and World War II, I believe they were actually given out as part of their military wares. And so if you go and do some simple research, you'll find brass knuckles that have knives attached to them. It's crazy, right? Especially for hand-to-hand combat.
They're illegal.
Yeah, they're illegal. Places. They're illegal in many countries, in many states. I found that myself. I've gone through
Considered
airports.
a deadly weapon.
Yeah, I've gone through airports, and they're like, "Sir," and I'm like, "What?" And they're holding up my brass knuckles. I'm like, "Oh crap!" You know what I'm saying? I'm like, they're like, and they take them from me, right?
Yeah.
And I'm
wait, time out. You carry around a pair of brass knuckles?
Not to fight, man.
I know.
There was a time where I was giving this talk so much, and then I would show, I'd show the guys, and they'd be like, "Oh, this is awesome." They'd pass them around. I'm like, "Guys, make sure I get my brass knuckles back."
The TSA agent doesn't buy that. Hey, I'm using it for a speech.
Exactly. The TSA agent was like, "Thanks, buddy. Good story." But yeah, and so when you look at what do brass knuckles do? They concentrate the punching power by the person who's doing the work. That's what it does, and it disrupts and breaks tendons, bone, tissue. Like that's what it does. Yeah. And so the acronym as you are fighting in this fight for clarity, right? It's a fight for clarity, a fight for peace, and this fight that you're having for tranquility and poise. Pull out the knuckles, man. Pull the knuckles out. Pull out the brass knuckles, and the first thing that you want to do is you want to breathe. That's B. Breathe. When you look at the human brain and the frontal lobe, which is in charge of innovation, strategic thinking, higher order operation, decision making, all of those things that happen in the frontal lobe, the human brain has two primary nutrients that it must have for highest levels of functioning: oxygen and glucose. When you were a child and you were mad, what did your mom tell you to do? Hey, take a deep breath.
Take a deep breath.
Take a deep breath, right?
It was actually really good advice.
It's actually scientifically sound advice, because the frontal lobe actually receives oxygen last.
Oh.
So when we're breathing for extended periods of time, now we're flooding our brain with the things that it needs to function at its highest. When we're not breathing, we become reactive and short. We don't
Which
think.
is so interesting, isn't it? Because our bodies, like with anxiety, the body naturally starts taking like short breaths, right?
It wants
Like
to
doing
survive.
it's doing the thing that it shouldn't be doing, right?
Right.
That you actually need to be taking deep breaths, which is the first part of this acronym. Breathe. Like
Breathe.
take deep breaths. And
Breathing is the proverbial steering wheel, the brake, and the accelerator for any type of performance issue that you may be facing.
And you're talking about because the frontal cortex of the brain,
Mhm.
which is where the emotions, right? Is that which again is like even sometimes, this is why this is such a great conversation for everyday life, not just athletics. You know, someone says something to you, and it just ticks you off,
Yeah.
and you're about to open your mouth and say something back.
Yeah.
Just take a deep breath first.
I'm telling you,
Right.
man.
So, great advice.
So yeah, you got to take a deep breath, man. I think of Dr. Viktor Frankl, and many people have read his book, Man's Search
Yeah.
for Meaning. And
Amazing book.
Yes, and it really is. Dr. Viktor Frankl was part of the. He was a prisoner in Auschwitz. You know, during the egregious things that happened during Nazi Europe and in Hitler's regime, right? And you know, some great insights, man. And I believe that God puts certain people through certain situations to reveal certain truths that are lasting.
Yeah.
And I think that Dr. Viktor Frankl was one of those men, one of those people in history. And one of the things that he said that's so powerful, he said, between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our ability to choose. And in our choice lies growth and freedom. Now, what the heck does that have to do with breathing? Many times, something happens. Somebody cuts us off in the freeway. Somebody says something disrespectful to our family member. Sometimes our boss or people at work are just irritating us to no end. And so between that stimulus, we don't leave any room for space. So we become reactive. How could you do that? Why'd you cut me off? Man, screw this, blah, 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 blah. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. And many of us don't allow for that space to take place. So we become reactors. But when we can do something as simple as breathing and stepping away, what we're doing is we're creating space. Between stimulus and response, there's a space. And in that space is our ability to choose.
Yeah.
Our ability to choose.
Yeah.
Now we have options. And in our choice lies growth and freedom. So breathing is so powerful.
I don't know that you know this, but you just perfectly wove this whole conversation into really the core of what our No Gray Areas podcast is about. Because we talk about the power and complexity of human choice, that we make choices and eventually our choices make us.
That's
so
awesome.
You just, with that whole thing, you're like talking about how we do choice well.
Yeah.
And so,
No,
that's
perfect.
Awesome. Nice work, Josiah.
Hey, thanks, man. He didn't pay me, guys. He didn't pay me for that. So
third one. Remember, you paid on the third one.
So the R is reframe.
Yeah.
Right? You start talking about stress, fear, anxiety, the tricky triad. You got to reframe. And how you frame anything determines how you see anything. So I can have the crappiest, craziest looking picture ever. But if I buy a nice, expensive frame and put it around this picture, it's going to be looking like $1 million.
Like a masterpiece. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. But if I have the best picture ever, and if the frame is like cheap and it's falling off, like, dude, why are you hanging this on the wall, dude?
Yeah.
Framing is huge. So I tell athletes, instead of saying I can't do X or I can't do Y, what we need to do is say I can do X when I do Y.
I love this. Is the part of the book another part of the book that really stood out to me. Say that again. Instead of saying I can't do.
So I can't throw a fastball. I can't sink this free throw. Stop saying I can't. Stop saying that. What you need to do is say I can sink this free throw when I get full extension.
Yeah.
I can barrel up. I can hit this curveball when I barrel it up. I can sink this punt. You're reframing. You're putting it in that $1 million frame.
Yeah.
Think, say, do. Think, say, do. Whatever you think, you're eventually going to say, and whatever you say, you're eventually going to do. Your words are so powerful and the reason why is because your words are the connective tissue between your thoughts and your action.
And this goes back to what we talked about earlier. Our words, we have so much internal dialogue that I don't think a lot of people even realize. Like, again, I encourage our audience, start paying attention to how much you're talking to yourself and you don't even realize it. Like it's
Yeah.
just, all of us have ongoing dialogue all the time.
100%.
But what you're saying is that's powerful.
They're very powerful. Dr. Jason Selkin has a book called 10-Minute Toughness. I highly suggest you read it. It's one of the books that I first read when I got into sport and performance psychology. One of the things that he said in terms of the research was that the average human being has anywhere between 12 to 60,000 plus thoughts per day. And the majority of these thoughts are negative. Yeah.
So if you just reframe,
gotta
if you
reframe
started
it.
training, this takes discipline though, doesn't it?
I can 100%. I can do X when I do Y, not if. I can do X when I do Y. And what you're doing is you're actually creating a problem-solving. You're creating a problem-solving situation, and you're giving yourself a process-oriented solution in that statement. I can do X when I do Y.
Yeah.
I can get in shape when I do this. I can get an A when I do this. I can barrel it up when I do this. I can sink this free throw when I do this.
Yeah.
It's not we have to change the frame, man.
So good.
You know?
So good.
So that's the R. The A stands for acknowledge. Sometimes one of the greatest things to do when it comes to stress, fear, and anxiety is to acknowledge that you're dealing with it. Don't try to act like a tough guy, or a tough girl. Don't try. Just acknowledge it.
Yeah.
This is research, man. This isn't me making this stuff up. The simple fact that you somebody acknowledges something is stressing them out actually reduces anxiety.
Yeah. Brings it down right away. Just saying it. Just voicing.
Just saying it.
Yeah.
Because what it does is it defangs the lion and it takes his claws away. It takes his claws and his teeth away. If you look at it, right, I was going to give you an impersonation, but I'm not going to go do that. But you look at all of these shows, right? These reality TV shows, right? Biggest Loser was a huge one for a long time. All these reality TV shows, there's always this element that's present in reality TV shows. One of the key characters is about to have a breakdown. Johnny, what's going on, Johnny? Oh, I used to get made fun of when I was in the 3rd grade by this person. Oh, Sally, what's going on, Sally? Oh, I have this fear of heights. And what do? They bring in Johnny's bully from grade school. You gotta face the person now who's been giving you all this stuff. What do? They take Sally up into a prop plane, and they basically kick her off and make her parachute to face that fear, to acknowledge. And what happens when these contestants face that fear? There's like a release.
Yeah, like you said, a defanging almost.
And it's like, oh man, I didn't think it was.
Die.
Yeah, I didn't die, and it wasn't that bad, and I gave this person way too much power.
Yeah.
You have to acknowledge that you're going through something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it takes stress down.
Good.
Right? And anxiety, right? And the S stands for survey. So my breathing's right? My reframing is right. My words are right. I've acknowledged that I'm dealing with X, Y, and Z. The S stands for survey. Survey means to look around, to marry what could be with what actually is. What does a surveyor do? A surveyor, when they go to a new township, what are they doing? They're looking around. They're saying, okay, we can put a stoplight here. Yeah. We can put an easement here. We can't put 2 lanes here because we have a lot of traffic at rush hour. And they're marrying what could be with what already is. And what happens is when we don't survey the land, obviously I'm dealing with athletes here, but when an athlete doesn't know where his infielders are or his outfielders, when they don't know where the defense is coming from or where the screen's coming from, you start playing with tunnel vision, and it heightens stress, fear, and it heightens anxiety because you don't know what's going on. And one of the things I talk about in the book is that your brain has several cortical maps. You have a cortical map in your brain for everything that you do. Tying your shoe, riding a bike, driving a car. You have a cortical map for throwing a baseball. You have a cortical map for everything. Everything. And
but when we've done some of those things many, many, many times, we don't even realize we're following a map anymore. It's just like
it's automatic.
Yeah, it's just automatic.
So when you survey,
that was the sound effect of automatic.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And so when you survey, what happens is you clarify the maps.
Okay.
So I'm gonna give you an example. At home right now, at your house, do you know where your bathroom is?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know where your kitchen is?
Yeah.
Okay. You know where the backyard is?
Yeah.
You know where all three of those things are?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, power outage, 2 a.m., dark, power outage. You're up and you need some water.
I can get around pretty well.
Do you know where your backyard is?
Yeah.
You know where your kitchen is?
Yeah.
You know where your bathroom is?
Yeah.
Why? How?
I've walked it many times.
That's how our brains are. Our brains have done these things so many times that we know exactly where they are. Now, fast forward. Now you're on the road. You're in a nice hotel.
This has happened to me, by the way. I know exactly.
Power outage.
Yep.
Do you know
running into walls, stubbing your toe?
Exactly.
Yep.
You're not getting around as easy.
No.
This is exactly what happens.
Feeling the room out. Yeah.
That's right. This is exactly what happens to athletes, high performers, anybody who is struggling with stress, fear, or anxiety, and they have not taken the time to survey both cognitively and physically what is around them. This is science, man. This is straight science here. Yeah. Right? Well, if you look at every high level performer during a playoff game, during any type of like pivotal game or whatever, what are they doing the night before, the day of? They're walking around the court, the field.
Yep.
They're seeing what the gravel, the turf is looking like. They're seeing where the sun is. They're surveying. They're clarifying,
visualizing a little bit, right? Visualizing the
yeah. So when you start talking about stress, fear, and anxiety, these things help to clarify those maps. And when you do all of those things, you breathe, you reframe, you acknowledge, you survey, everything slows down.
Yeah.
You're able to create space between stimulus and response. You're able to make really good decisions because now you're operating from a place of poise and a place of power instead of a place of confusion and chaos.
You know, and the language you just used, which is so interesting, because anybody who watches sports, they know when they see someone who's playing really well, they talk about like the game slowed down for them, right? The game slowed down for them. But again, taking this and adopting it to our everyday life, someone who's doing life well, you get life to slow down. Like life's coming at us fast. It's like boom, boom, boom. But when you do these things in our everyday life, we're helping life slow down a little bit. We're creating that space to make the decision, right?
And I would even argue, so because we use the term a lot, right? Oh, it slows down. Sometimes, when you start, because I've had some really intellectual conversations with people about this concept, and I use the term slow down in a proverbial sense. But at the end of the day, a second is still a second. An hour is an hour is still an hour. A minute is still a minute, right? But why does it slow down? Because now we're controlling the narrative. We're controlling what's going on, and the situation is not controlling us. So from a spiritual perspective, as men of faith, right, we are not physical beings having a spiritual experience on earth. We're not.
Yeah.
That's not what the Bible says. We are spiritual beings having a physical experience on earth.
Yeah.
We have to deal with time. Yeah. We have to deal with our decaying bodies. Yeah. We have to deal with sin and a broken world while we're here. We have to deal with that in time and space.
Yeah.
But these things help us, right, to be able to do what God has called us to do on this earth. Yeah. So that's why I call the tricky triad. And those three things help with so many of those things that you deal with when it comes to stress, fear, and anxiety.
Yeah. Man, Josiah, we could go on and on. I love every time I meet with you. I get fired up, like I said, and motivated and encouraged. I would just really, again, encourage our audience, Own the Pieces. It's a great book. We're going to do a giveaway with this one, by the way. I did not underline or mark anything. I took a bunch of notes over on my computer, but I wanted to make sure that this book, we could do a giveaway. How do people get a hold of you or connect with you?
I'm on all the social media channels. I don't think I'm on TikTok. At the time of this recording, I don't think I'm on TikTok, but I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on YouTube, I'm on Twitter, all the major platforms, Instagram. So Josiah Igono, or All Things Performance.
Okay.
You can, if you just do a simple search on any of those platforms for All Things Performance, or Josiah Igono, Igono, you'll see all of my stuff.
We'll have that information in our description too. Absolutely. Those links to that as well. Just really quick, I know we talked about the first time you came, but I named our firstborn son Josiah.
Yes.
Why'd your dad, your mom give you that name? That's royalty, by the way, if our audience doesn't know.
Yeah, man. So my mom and dad, they named us after kings in the Bible. One of them was not necessarily a king, but Josiah, David, Cyrus, and Jacob. And you could argue that Jacob had kingly traits, and but that's that's how it started, man.
Wow. Yeah. Josiah became one of my heroes, which is why I named my son after him, because he was one of the only good kings in Israel's history.
And even at a young age, he turned the entire nation back around, and he had a horrible father and grandfather.
Yeah.
You know this history.
Oh, yeah.
So that was one of the stories where I'm like, hey, whatever we inherited, whatever we were given, that's
Mhm.
not where the story needs to end. We can choose to change things, which is
Amen.
part of what we talked about
Oh,
today.
yeah.
But your kingly name, your royalty name, Josiah, Yoshiyahu. in Hebrew.
Yoshiyahu, that's right. You
Yeah.
told me that, and I
Yeah.
went to go look it up, and you're right, man.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah. So that's why our nickname for our son is Yo.
Yo,
It's short for Yoshiyahu.
That's awesome,
the
man.
Hebrew form of Josiah. But I encourage people, go find Josiah on social media, follow him. I've gotten a lot from it. You know, there was in September, you posted something, and adjustments are part of life. Such a simple
Mhm.
little phrase, but I don't know why that day, it
Mhm.
was like September 9th or something like that.
Mhm.
Why that day, it was like, boom, I wrote that down
Mhm.
and I read it to myself for the next 5 or 6 days. So I'm just saying that because, again, our audience will get a lot if they start following you.
Appreciate you.
You give some great advice. So, all right, 2 truths and a lie.
Oh man,
You were here before.
yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
remember if I figured it out the first time or not. I know I'm going to figure it out this time because you said you were going to just do it spur of the moment here. So
Yeah.
let's see.
All right, so 2 truths and a lie. So okay, here are my statements. Been married for 8 years. My doctorate is in performance psychology, and at one point in time, I had a 39.5-inch vertical.
I know number 2 is true. And I know you were a good athlete. I'm going with the 39.5-inch vertical. And I think you've been married longer than 8 years. So I'm going to say that one's the lie.
Which one?
The first one. You've been married for 8 years. That's the lie. You've been married longer than that, haven't you?
Yes.
Good.
Yeah, man. Good, man. That's
Good.
good. That's good, man. Yeah.
All right.
14, man. 14 years. So you
You
nailed
were a
it.
good athlete. I
Yeah.
actually had the privilege of before we even knew each other. We met when I moved down here, and you were working at Fellowship of Christian Athletes. But I actually saw you play when you were playing for NAU. You were playing up in Montana, where I'm
Montana.
from, in Missoula, Montana.
Oh,
You were playing
man.
the Grizzlies, tough place to play. And I saw you on the field. You were a defensive back. You also played for ASU.
Yeah.
So that's why I didn't doubt that you had a 39.5-inch
Man.
vertical.
I was an average athlete, or to below average, depending on who you ask. And if my teammates were on the podcast, they would all say below average, give me crap. But yeah, man,
If you made it to that level,
hey,
you're above average.
I tell you
Come
what,
on.
I tell you what, man, that was one of the most I would say top 2 craziest environments I've ever been in my life.
Yeah.
In Missoula, that was crazy.
People don't know because
It's crazy.
It's small town, but it's in a pit, and there'll be 25,000 people there. For a school that size,
Yeah.
that's a lot of people, and none of them are kind and courteous as they weren't to you that day.
I mean, I had little kids flipping me off. You
I
know
know.
what I mean? I was
I
about
was-
to fight. This whole stuff that we're talking about right now, between stimulus and response, I had no space. There was no space. I had
Well,
negative space. You know what
that
I'm
was the
saying?
first time I ever saw you. That was the one I caught you the one time where you were,
Oh,
as we
man.
all do, right? I
Oh.
caught you in the one day because
Oh, man.
I think you got kicked out of that game, didn't you?
I did. I got ejected from that game.
Yeah.
I got ejected from that game because,
You know what?
I
I'm a
just lost
Montana
it.
fan. The guy was holding you.
I
though.
just
You're
I
right.
lost it, man.
He kept holding
Yeah.
you. I saw it firsthand. I'm gonna give you the benefit of the doubt on that one. So, and then you lost it and took him down.
Apparently, I
But yeah,
blacked out.
as you're coming down the tunnel after you got kicked
Yeah.
out, I'm watching. I'm sitting there and I'm watching these 8-year-old kids flipping you off, and their dads are like, "Good job, son." And that's the kind of crowd they have there.
Oh man, that was brutal, man. And we lost. And we lost that game too. Man.
Of course he did. Of course he did
Oh,
that.
man.
Well, Josiah, thanks so much, man. I appreciate
Appreciate you.
you.
Thank you.
I appreciate our friendship. Like I said, we don't see each other often, but when we
Yeah.
do, man, I am motivated and encouraged. So
I appreciate you.
we'll have you back, and next time we gotta slip you a check to get you.
No.
back the third time.
I appreciate you.
All
Thank
right,
you.
thanks, man.
All right.
What a powerful conversation that was with Josiah. So many nuggets of truth that we can hold on to after this episode. We hope this episode inspired you, and if you want to connect with Josiah, we'll leave his contact info in the description below. Be sure to enter our giveaway on our Instagram account for a chance to win his new book, Own the Pieces. We'll see you next time on the No Gray Areas podcast.